The restaurant was packed that Thursday evening, filled with the warm glow of candlelight and the gentle hum of conversation. At a corner table near the window, David and his wife Rachel were celebrating something special: 10 years of marriage. A decade of ups and downs, laughter and tears, and somehow, they'd made it through everything together. David reached across the table and squeezed Rachel's hand. She smiled at him with that same bright smile that had made him fall in love with her all those years ago. They ordered their favorite dishes and spent the evening talking about everything and nothing. Remember when we got lost on our honeymoon in Italy? Remember that terrible apartment we lived in when we first got married with the leaking ceiling? Remember when our daughter Mia was born and we were so scared we'd mess everything up? The memories flowed as easily as the wine they were sharing. For a couple in their late 30s, juggling demanding careers, David as an architect and Rachel as a doctor, nights like this were rare treasures. Around 9:30, they finished their meal. The waiter brought them a complimentary dessert with a little candle on top. "Happy anniversary," he said with a genuine smile. They thanked him and shared the chocolate cake, stealing bites from each other's forks like teenagers. When they finally paid the bill and stood to leave, Rachel suggested something spontaneous. "Let's take a walk through Riverside Park before we head home. It's such a beautiful night." David checked his watch. Mia was sleeping over at her best friend's house, so they had no rush to get back. Why not? The park was only a few minutes away, and the autumn air had that perfect crisp quality that made you want to be outside. They walked to their car hand in hand, laughing about something silly one of their coworkers had done that week. The parking attendant watched them drive away, later telling police they seemed like the happiest couple he'd seen all month. The drive to Riverside Park took less than 10 minutes. They found a spot in the main parking lot, which was mostly empty at this hour. A few other cars were scattered here and there, probably belonging to evening joggers or couples like themselves enjoying the night. David turned off the engine but left the keys in the ignition. They'd only be gone for a quick walk around the lake path. 20 minutes, maybe 30 at most. The park was beautiful in the moonlight. Old oak trees lined the pathways, their branches creating intricate shadows on the ground. A light breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Rachel pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. It was cooler than she'd expected, but not uncomfortably so. They walked slowly, in no hurry, talking about their plans for the weekend and whether they should finally start that kitchen renovation they'd been putting off for 2 years. As they rounded a bend in the path, David noticed something odd. There was a faint humming sound in the distance, almost like electrical wires, but deeper, more resonant. "Can you hear that?" he asked Rachel. She stopped walking and tilted her head, listening. "Yeah, that's strange. What is that?" They stood there for a moment, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. It seemed to be coming from somewhere off the main path, deeper into the wooded area of the park. "Maybe it's just the park's irrigation system or something," Rachel suggested. But David was curious now. He'd always been the type to investigate unusual things, a quality that made him good at his job but sometimes got him into minor trouble. "Let's just take a quick look. It won't take long." Rachel hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "All right. But just a quick look. I don't want to be stumbling around in the dark." They left the paved path and walked carefully through the trees. The humming grew louder as they went, and now they could see a faint, bluish glow ahead. "What on earth?" David muttered. They pushed through some bushes and found themselves standing in front of an old maintenance building they'd never noticed before. The structure was small, made of concrete, and looked like it hadn't been used in decades. The door was slightly ajar, and the humming sound was definitely coming from inside. The strange glow pulsed gently, casting weird shadows on the surrounding trees. "This is probably just old electrical equipment," Rachel said, but her voice sounded uncertain. "We should go back." But something about the situation drew them forward. It was like that feeling when you know you should turn away but curiosity has already taken hold. David pushed the door open wider. Inside, they could see stairs leading down into darkness, and the glow was coming from below. The humming had a rhythm to it now, almost like a heartbeat. They descended the stairs carefully, using David's phone as a flashlight. The concrete walls were covered in old graffiti and water stains. At the bottom, they found themselves in a tunnel, and that's when things got really strange. The blue glow was coming from the far end, and as they walked toward it, both of them felt a weird sensation in their chests, like static electricity building up. Rachel grabbed David's arm. "I think we should really go back now. This doesn't feel right." But before they could turn around, the glow suddenly intensified, becoming almost blinding. The humming turned into a high-pitched whine. They both felt a pulling sensation, like being caught in a strong current. David tried to move backward, but found he couldn't. Rachel screamed his name, and then everything went white. Back at the parking lot, their car sat waiting with the keys still in the ignition and Rachel's purse on the passenger seat. By morning, when their daughter came home to an empty house with no message from her parents, she knew something was terribly wrong. Detective Lisa Chen had been with the police department for 15 years, and she'd seen plenty of missing person cases. But something about this one felt different from the moment she arrived at Riverside Park. The couple's car was exactly where they'd left it the night before. Keys in the ignition. Rachel's purse sitting on the passenger seat with her wallet, credit cards, phone, everything, inside. David's phone was there too, plugged into the charger. No signs of a struggle. No broken glass. No blood. Nothing that suggested anything bad had happened. It was like they'd simply stepped out of the car and vanished into thin air. Lisa walked around the vehicle slowly, taking in every detail. The car was locked when it was found by a morning jogger who'd recognized it from the news alert that had gone out. The jogger hadn't touched anything, just called it in immediately. Smart guy. Lisa made a note to thank him properly later. She pulled on a pair of gloves and carefully opened the driver's side door. The interior was neat and clean. A coffee cup in the holder. Some papers in the back seat, related to David's architecture work. A child's drawing taped to the dashboard. A normal family car belonging to normal people who'd somehow disappeared. The park security office was Lisa's next stop. She needed to see the camera footage from last night. The security guard, an older man named Tom who'd worked there for 20 years, looked uncomfortable as he pulled up the files. "We've got a problem, detective. The cameras went down last night." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean they went down?" Tom showed her the screen. From 10 at night until just after midnight, all 6 cameras in the park recorded nothing but static. "Just a technical glitch," he said. But his voice betrayed his doubt. "In 20 years, I've never seen all of them fail at once." Lisa requested footage from the traffic cameras on the streets leading to the park. She spent hours reviewing it with her team. They found David and Rachel's car entering the park at 9:47. The timestamp was clear, but no footage showed them leaving. She checked every possible exit route. Nothing. It was as if the car had driven into the park and the couple had simply ceased to exist. She expanded the search to nearby businesses with security cameras, but the park was surrounded mostly by residential areas and woodland. The few cameras that existed showed nothing unusual. The next step was interviewing everyone who knew the couple. Lisa sat down with their daughter Mia first. The girl was 16, staying with her aunt, and clearly devastated. She kept clutching her phone like it was a lifeline, probably hoping her parents would call. "They never fight," Mia said, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone asks me that, but they don't. They're like disgustingly happy together. My friends used to joke about it." Lisa's heart ached for the kid, but she had to ask the hard questions. "Any money problems? Any strange behavior lately? Anything unusual at all?" Mia shook her head to everything. "They were just normal. Just my normal, boring, Happy parents. David's colleagues at the architecture firm all said the same thing. Great guy. Talented. No enemies. No problems at work. He'd just won a major contract the week before. Everything was going well for him. Rachel's co-workers at the hospital were equally puzzled. She was one of their best pediatric surgeons, loved by staff and patients alike. No malpractice suits, no conflicts, nothing that would make someone want to hurt her. Lisa interviewed the restaurant staff where they'd had dinner. The waiter remembered them clearly. They seemed so in love, he told Lisa. The guy kept making her laugh. They were holding hands when they left. It was really sweet, actually. Days turned into a week. Lisa organized search parties. Volunteers combed through every inch of Riverside Park. They searched the lake with sonar equipment and sent divers down to check the bottom. They brought in dogs to track scents. The dogs picked up David and Rachel's trail from the car, followed it along the main path, then lost it completely near the wooded area on the east side of the park. The handlers were confused. "It's like the scent just stops," one of them told Lisa. "I've never seen anything like it." The media coverage was intense. Every news channel ran the story. The anniversary vanishing, they called it. Lisa hated the dramatic name, but she couldn't deny it captured public attention. Tips poured in from all over the country. Someone claimed they saw a couple matching their description at a gas station in Ohio. Another person swore they were living in Florida under assumed names. Every lead was checked and dismissed. None of them were David and Rachel. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. The case went cold, despite everyone's best efforts. Lisa refused to give up, though. She kept going back to the park, walking the paths, trying to think like they might have thought. Why would they leave the main path? Where could they have gone? She studied maps of the park, old and new. She requested blueprints from the city planning office. And that's when she found something interesting. The park had been built in the 1940s, and beneath it was a network of old maintenance tunnels that were supposedly sealed decades ago. Lisa got permission to check the tunnel entrances. Most of them were indeed sealed with concrete and steel plates, but when she reached the location where the search dogs had lost the scent, she found something. Hidden behind overgrown bushes was a small concrete building, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, stairs led down into darkness. Lisa's flashlight beam revealed footprints in the dust on the steps. Fresh footprints. 2 sets. One larger, one smaller. She called for backup and forensics. As she waited for them to arrive, she stood at the top of those stairs and felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever had happened to David and Rachel, this was where their trail had led. But where had they gone from here? And more importantly, were they still alive? 6 weeks after David and Rachel disappeared, the case had gone quiet. The media had moved on to other stories. The search parties had stopped. Most people had given up hope, except for Detective Lisa Chen and Mia, who refused to believe her parents were gone forever. Lisa continued investigating on her own time, often staying late at the office, reviewing files and looking for anything she might have missed. She'd become almost obsessed with the case. Something about it didn't add up, and she couldn't let it go. Then, on a Tuesday morning, the park maintenance supervisor called her. "Detective Chen, we found something." Lisa drove to the park immediately, her heart racing. The supervisor, a middle-aged man named Robert, led her to a rarely used trail on the far side of the park. "One of my guys was clearing brush along here and found this buried in the dirt." He held up an evidence bag containing a man's watch. It was expensive looking. Silver with a black leather band. The crystal was cracked, but the watch face was still visible. Lisa took photos and carefully documented everything before bagging it as evidence. She called Mia and asked her to come identify it if she could. The girl arrived within an hour, her aunt driving her. Mia took one look at the watch through the evidence bag and started crying. "That's my dad's watch. Grandpa gave it to him on his wedding day. He never takes it off. Never." Lisa felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. It was the first physical evidence they'd found. But what did it mean? Why would David's watch be here, so far from where their car was parked? The forensics team examined the watch carefully. What they found was bizarre. The watch had stopped at exactly 10:23 on the night of the disappearance. But that wasn't the strange part. When they ran tests on it, they detected unusual electromagnetic signatures that the technician couldn't explain. "I've never seen readings like this," he told Lisa. "It's like the watch was exposed to some kind of powerful electromagnetic field. But there's nothing in this park that could generate that kind of energy." Lisa ordered a more thorough search of the area where the watch was found. 3 days later, another discovery. Rachel's medical identification badge, the one she wore at the hospital, was found about a quarter-mile away from where David's watch had been. Again, it had the same strange electromagnetic readings. Again, it seemed to have been dropped or lost in an area of the park that didn't make sense based on where their car was parked. Lisa spread a map of the park across her desk and marked both locations. She drew lines, connecting them to the car, to the old maintenance building, trying to find a pattern. That's when she noticed something interesting. Both items were found near old storm drains. She'd walked past these drains 100 times during her searches, but never paid them much attention. Now she looked at them more carefully. The drains were large, concrete structures from the park's original construction, and according to the old blueprints she'd studied, they connected to the sealed maintenance tunnel system. Lisa felt her pulse quicken. What if the tunnels weren't completely sealed? What if there was a way down there that everyone had missed? She got permission to explore the tunnel system. The city sent engineers to help her access it safely. They had to cut through old locks and pry open sealed entrances. The air inside was stale and dusty. Lisa's flashlight beam cut through the darkness as she descended into the tunnels with 2 officers and an engineer. The tunnels were surprisingly extensive, running beneath much of the park like concrete veins. Water dripped from the ceiling in places. Old pipes lined the walls. It felt like stepping back in time. They walked carefully, checking each branch of the tunnel system. The beam from Lisa's flashlight suddenly caught something on the ground. Footprints. Fresh footprints in the thick dust that covered the tunnel floor. She knelt down to examine them more closely. 2 sets of prints. One larger, one smaller. They matched the shoe sizes of David and Rachel based on records Lisa had obtained. Her hands trembled as she took photos. The couple had been down here. But when? And why? They followed the footprints deeper into the tunnel system. The prints were clear at first, easy to track. Then, they started to become strange. In some places, they seemed to fade, as if the people making them were becoming lighter somehow. In other spots, they were deeper, pressed into the dust, with more force than normal walking would create. The engineer accompanying them had no explanation for it. "This doesn't make physical sense," he muttered. The prints led them through turn after turn, going deeper underground. The air grew colder. Lisa could see her breath now, even though it was autumn and not that cold outside. Finally, the footprints led them to a dead end. A solid concrete wall blocked their path. But the footprints didn't stop or turn back. They walked straight up to the wall and simply ended. It was as if David and Rachel had walked directly into solid concrete and vanished. Lisa pressed her hands against the wall, feeling for any hidden door or mechanism. Nothing. It was solid concrete, probably several feet thick. She stepped back and studied the scene. This was impossible. People don't just walk through walls. One of the officers pointed his flashlight at the wall more closely. "Detective, look at this." There were marks on the concrete, strange patterns that looked almost burned into the surface. They formed a rough circle about 7 feet in diameter. Inside the circle, The concrete had a different texture, almost smooth compared to the rough surface everywhere else. Lisa pulled out her phone and called the forensics team. She needed experts down here to analyze this wall and figure out what they were dealing with. The forensics team arrived with specialized equipment. They ran every test they could think of: chemical analysis, structural scans, thermal imaging. What they found made no sense. There were traces of elements that shouldn't exist in ordinary concrete. The electromagnetic readings here were off the charts, similar to what they'd found on David's watch and Rachel's badge, but much stronger. One scientist suggested they might be dealing with some kind of unusual geological formation that was generating these fields naturally. But another pointed out that the patterns were too regular, too organized to be natural. Lisa stood in that tunnel for hours, staring at the wall where the footprints ended. She'd been a detective long enough to know when she was dealing with something beyond her experience. This case had gone from a simple missing persons investigation to something else entirely. Something that didn't fit into any category. She understood. She thought about David and Rachel walking down here in the dark, following that strange humming sound. She thought about their footprints ending at this wall. And she thought about their daughter waiting at home, desperate for answers. Lisa made a decision. She was going to find out what happened here. No matter how impossible it seemed. She was going to bring David and Rachel home, or at least give their daughter the truth, whatever that truth might be. Detective Lisa Chen had never been particularly interested in history, but now she found herself spending every spare moment in the city archives and library. She needed to understand the park's past, especially those mysterious tunnels beneath it. The official records were sparse. The tunnel system had been built in the 1940s as part of the park's infrastructure for maintenance and utilities. They'd been sealed in the 1960s when the park was renovated and a new system was installed. Simple enough, except Lisa had learned not to trust simple explanations anymore. She dug deeper, requesting records that hadn't been digitized yet. Old documents stored in boxes in the basement of City Hall. That's where she found a name that kept appearing in documents from 1947. Dr. Wilhelm Strauss. He'd been some kind of scientist working in the park during that period. But all the documents related to his work were marked classified, and most were missing from the files. Only fragments remained. References to experiments. Mentions of government funding. A brief note about the project being shut down suddenly. And then nothing. The man seemed to have disappeared from all official records after 1948. Lisa had hit a wall until she tried a different approach. She searched for the name Strauss in phone directories and genealogy websites. It took days of searching, but she finally found a lead. Wilhelm Strauss had a son who'd had a son of his own. That grandson, Thomas Strauss, was still alive. He was 73 years old and living in a nursing home about 2 hours away. Lisa called ahead and made an appointment to visit him. She wasn't sure what she was hoping to find, but it was the only lead she had. Thomas Strauss was a thin man with sharp eyes and a careful way of speaking. When Lisa introduced herself and mentioned why she was there, his expression changed. He looked both relieved and frightened at the same time. "I wondered when someone would come asking about this," he said quietly. "My grandfather made me promise never to tell anyone, but he's been dead for 40 years. And if people are disappearing again, then his secret has done more harm than good." Lisa sat down across from him, her notebook ready. "Tell me everything." Thomas's story was incredible. His grandfather had been a physicist working on classified projects during and after the war. In 1946, he'd been assigned to conduct experiments in the tunnels beneath Riverside Park. The exact nature of the experiments was never fully explained, but it involved electromagnetic fields and theoretical physics. Something about trying to create stable fields that could be used for communication or possibly energy generation. But something went wrong. The experiments created an unexpected effect that Wilhelm Strauss didn't understand and couldn't control. In March of 1947, 3 of Wilhelm's research assistants went into the tunnels to check on equipment and never came back. They searched for weeks but found no trace of them. Wilhelm was devastated. He continued his experiments frantically, trying to understand what had happened. His notes from that period, which Thomas still had, were filled with increasingly desperate observations. He'd created something he called a thin spot, a place where the normal rules of physics didn't quite apply. He believed his assistants had somehow passed through this thin spot into somewhere else. But where? And how could he bring them back? Thomas pulled out a worn leather journal from a box beside his chair. "This is his final journal," he said, handing it to Lisa with shaking hands. The last entry is dated November 1947. Lisa opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was tight and frantic. She read the final entry. "The gateway remains. God forgive me, I cannot close it. I have tried everything. The field is self-sustaining now. I have sealed the tunnel access points. No one must find it. The research must end here. I pray no one ever walks through that spot again. What I have created, I cannot destroy. May God have mercy on those poor souls who are lost because of my work." Lisa looked up at Thomas. "The tunnel was sealed after this?" Thomas nodded. "My grandfather spent his own money to have concrete and steel barriers installed at every entrance. The government project was officially shut down and all records were classified. Grandfather was forced to sign agreements never to speak about his work. He was a broken man after that. Spent the rest of his life trying to understand what he'd done, but he never found answers. He died in 1985, still haunted by those missing assistants." Lisa felt a chill run through her. David and Rachel must have found a way into those sealed tunnels. They'd walked down there, following that strange sound and light. And they'd walked into Wilhelm Strauss's thin spot. But Thomas's next words gave her a spark of hope. "My grandfather believed the effect was reversible. He thought if someone could stabilize the field and understand its frequency, they might be able to create a controlled opening. He just didn't have the technology or knowledge to do it in his time. But, with today's understanding of physics and modern equipment, maybe someone could." Lisa thanked Thomas and left with photocopies of Wilhelm Strauss's journals. Back at the police station, she knew she was facing a decision. What she had learned sounded impossible, like something from a science fiction movie. If she presented this to her superiors, they'd probably think she'd lost her mind. But she thought about David and Rachel. She thought about Mia waiting for her parents to come home. And she thought about those footprints ending at that wall. She made some calls. She needed scientists, real ones who worked with cutting-edge physics. She needed people who wouldn't laugh at the idea of thin spots and gateways to other places. It took some convincing, but she eventually got a team together. 2 physicists from the university, an electromagnetic specialist from a private research company, and several engineers. They met in the tunnel with their equipment, studying the wall where the footprints ended. For 3 days they ran tests and collected data. The electromagnetic readings were consistent with something the physicists called a dimensional weak point. One of them, a younger woman named Dr. Patricia Kwan, explained it in terms Lisa could understand. "Think of our reality as a sheet of paper. Most of the paper is thick and solid. But in some places, maybe because of natural conditions or in this case artificial manipulation, the paper becomes thin, almost transparent. Things can pass through these thin spots into what might be another sheet of paper lying beneath ours." "Can we open it?" Lisa asked. "Can we get them back?" Dr. Kwan looked uncertain. "Maybe. If we can generate the right frequency and stabilize the field, we might be able to create a temporary opening. But there are no guarantees. We don't know what's on the other side. We don't know if they're even still alive. And we don't know if opening this thing is safe." Lisa looked at the wall where David and Rachel's footprints ended. "We have to try. We owe them that much." The team agreed to attempt it. They spent 2 weeks setting up equipment in the tunnel, running calculations, testing different frequencies. And then, one evening, almost 3 months after David and Rachel disappeared, they were ready to try. The tunnel was crowded with people and equipment. Detective Lisa Chen stood off to the side, watching the scientists work. Dr. Patricia Kwan and her team had set up a ring of devices around the wall where the footprints ended. The devices hummed with power, creating a sound similar to what David and Rachel must have heard that night. Mia was there too, standing with her aunt. Lisa had tried to convince her to stay home, but the girl had insisted, "If there's any chance my parents are coming back, I need to be here." Dr. Kwan checked her equipment one final time. "All right, everyone. We're going to start with a low-power test. We'll gradually increase the field strength until we see a reaction. If everything Wilhelm Strauss wrote in his journals is accurate, we should start seeing visual distortions in the wall at a specific frequency." She nodded to her colleague, who began adjusting controls on a laptop. The humming grew louder. The air in the tunnel felt heavy, charged with static electricity. Lisa's hair began to stand up slightly. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then someone gasped and pointed at the wall. The concrete surface was beginning to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The shimmer grew stronger, and suddenly everyone could see it. The solid wall was becoming translucent. Through it, they could see something impossible. Another place. The view was hazy and unclear, but they could make out shapes, trees, sky. Except the sky had a strange purple tint to it, and the trees looked subtly wrong, like someone had painted them from memory rather than life. Dr. Kwan's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "The field is stabilizing. We're maintaining the opening. Everyone stay calm and stay back from the wall. We don't know what happens if you touch it." They watched the impossible view through the wall for several minutes. It was clearly outdoors, somewhere, possibly a forest or park. But it definitely wasn't their world. The colors were wrong. The light was wrong. Everything had an alien quality that made Lisa's stomach twist. Then something moved in the view. Two figures, human-shaped, walking between the strange trees. They were far away at first, just shadows, but they were moving toward the opening. As they got closer, someone cried out. It was Mia. She'd recognized them before anyone else. "Mom! Dad!" The figures were definitely David and Rachel. They looked thinner than before, their clothes dirty and torn. But they were alive. They were walking toward the opening with increasing speed. Then, running. Rachel saw the opening first and grabbed David's arm, pointing. They started shouting, but no sound came through. The opening showed only visuals, no audio. But their meaning was clear. They were trying to get back. They'd been trying to get back this whole time. Dr. Kwan worked frantically at her laptop. "I'm trying to stabilize the field further. If I can increase the coherence, we might be able to create a full opening instead of just a window." The shimmer in the wall intensified. Cracks appeared in the concrete around the opening, but they weren't normal cracks. They glowed with the same blue light they'd seen that first night. Suddenly, the view flickered. David and Rachel were closer now, only about 20 feet away, on the other side. Rachel's mouth was moving, clearly shouting something. David was reaching forward, his hand extended toward the opening. Then, the image destabilized. Static-like interference ran across the view. Dr. Kwan cursed under her breath. "The field is collapsing. I'm losing coherence." Everyone watched in horror as the opening began to fade. David and Rachel were running flat out now, desperate to reach it before it closed. But it was fading too fast. When the writing rogues. In seconds, the wall was solid concrete again, and they were gone. Mia collapsed, crying. They were right there. They were right there, and we lost them again. Lisa held the girl while her mind raced. But at least now they knew. David and Rachel were alive. They were trapped somewhere else, somewhere Wilhelm Strauss's experiments had created a doorway to, but they were alive. And if the team could create an opening once, they could do it again. Dr. Kwan was already making notes, reviewing the data her equipment had collected. I know what went wrong. I was too cautious with the power levels. We need more energy to create a stable opening they can actually pass through. Give me a week to analyze this data and recalibrate the equipment. That week felt like a year to everyone involved. The team worked around the clock, refining their approach. They brought in more powerful generators. They adjusted the frequency patterns based on Wilhelm Strauss's notes and their own observations. Mia came to the tunnel every day, unable to stay away. She'd seen her parents. She'd seen them alive. Nothing could keep her from being there when they tried again. Lisa spent the time coordinating with city officials and trying to keep the whole situation quiet. The last thing they needed was media attention turning this into a circus. Finally, they were ready for another attempt. It was a Wednesday evening, almost exactly 3 months after David and Rachel had disappeared. Dr. Kwan had chosen the date deliberately. It would have been their 11th wedding anniversary. Maybe the symmetry meant something. Or maybe it was just a nice gesture. Either way, everyone agreed. It felt right. The equipment powered up again. This time the humming was louder, deeper. The floor of the tunnel vibrated. The opening appeared faster than before. The shimmer in the wall, expanding quickly into a clear view of that strange other place. And there they were. David and Rachel, standing much closer this time. They'd clearly been waiting near the spot, probably camping there, in hopes the opening would return. When they saw it appear, their faces lit up with hope and relief. Dr. Kwan worked her controls carefully, gradually increasing the power. The opening grew larger, more solid. The blue glow intensified until it filled the tunnel with light. "Come on," Dr. Kwan muttered. "Come on. Stabilize." The opening suddenly expanded dramatically, no longer just a window but a genuine doorway in the wall. The concrete seemed to have disappeared entirely, replaced by a portal to that other world. David didn't hesitate. He grabbed Rachel's hand, and they ran forward together. One moment they were in that strange purple-tinted world. The next, they were crossing the threshold into the tunnel. They stumbled as they emerged, falling to their knees on the concrete floor. Mia screamed and ran to them, throwing her arms around both her parents at once. The three of them held each other and cried while everyone else in the tunnel stood back, giving them space. Lisa felt tears running down her own face. She'd done it. She'd brought them home. Dr. Kwan maintained the opening for another minute, studying it, collecting data. Then she began powering down the equipment. The opening shrank gradually and then vanished, the wall becoming solid concrete once more. As soon as it closed, she ordered her team to start dismantling the equipment. "We're destroying all of this. The generators, the field projectors. All of it. And then, we're sealing this tunnel permanently, with enough concrete that no one will ever access it again." Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Over the next few hours, David and Rachel told their story. They'd followed the sound and light into the tunnel that night. They'd walked toward what looked like a glowing circle in the wall. Before they realized what was happening, they'd passed through into another place. A world that looked like Earth, but wasn't quite right. They'd spent weeks trying to find a way back, surviving on strange fruit from the trees and water from streams. The wildlife there was similar to Earth's, but subtly different. They'd seen things they couldn't quite explain, and they'd never stopped hoping that somehow they'd find their way home. The tunnel was sealed permanently within days. The city poured hundreds of tons of concrete into the access points and welded steel plates over every entrance. Wilhelm Strauss's thin spot was buried under so much material that it would take years of effort to reach it again. The official story was that David and Rachel had been found suffering from amnesia after a head injury, wandering in a state park 100 miles away. It was thin as explanations go. But most people accepted it because they wanted the story to have a happy ending. Lisa visited the family a few weeks later at their home. They were recovering, putting their lives back together. Mia had her parents back, and that was all that mattered to her. David had returned to work at his architecture firm. Rachel was taking more time before returning to the hospital, but she was healing. They all bore the marks of their experience, but they were together. That's what counts, David told Lisa as they sat in the living room. Whatever happened to us, however impossible it seems, we made it through as a family. Lisa nodded, thinking about all the impossible things she'd seen in those tunnels. Some mysteries, she'd learned, were too strange to ever fully understand. But some mysteries were meant to be left alone. The important thing was that this one had a happy ending, and that was rare enough in her line of work.